My name's John Bush. Thanks for coming down to the Alt Expo tonight. Thanks for everyone that put it on, Jack and Nick, and all those crazy cats that are even more radical than what's going on with the FSP, which is always exciting. Today I want to talk about a project that is part of a nonprofit that we recently launched. I guess we launched it yesterday because I posted about it on Facebook for the first time. But it's called the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative, and it's part of the Center for Natural Living, which is what this little brochure is all about that you guys have. So first I'd like to give you a brief introduction about what we're going to be doing with the nonprofit in general. Then I want to really get into the details about the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative. And then I'd also like to use this as an opportunity to explore some ideas with the audience as well, so I can learn from you in moving forward, because our goals are rather ambitious, and we're going to need a lot of shared knowledge and wisdom in order to accomplish them. So essentially, the Center for Natural Living, we just launched. I want to thank John Ramsey. He's a young individual who happened to come into some wealth, and he is essentially putting his money where his mouth is, founding libertarian organizations, the Political Action Committee, and he's also doing some entrepreneurship and seeding some money for some projects that are helping liberty. And one of the things he did was help give us the startup capital to start the Center for Natural Living. So I want to thank him for really giving us a boost in that realm. Essentially, our mission is to demonstrate the value of voluntary cooperation and natural living in the areas of sustainability, family, and health by creating educational media and assisting families in fulfilling their most basic needs. So that's quite a mouthful, but you'll see that our two values we're pushing for are voluntary cooperation, or individuals, families, and communities peacefully interacting for mutual benefit, absent coercion, violence, or the threat of violence. And we're also pushing for natural living, the idea that individuals, families, and communities ought to live in a manner that is in balance with their natural self, their natural surroundings, their natural environment. Just be in balance with nature, going from natural rights to being a good steward with the environment. And we are focusing on three particular areas in order to demonstrate the value of voluntary cooperation and natural living. That's family, sustainability, and health. And if you turn around to the back, we have just a brief overview of exactly what it is that we're talking about and what it is that we're trying to promote in those different areas. For sustainability, we're focusing on the provision, supporting, exploring, and building sustainable communities. And I define sustainability, I'll get into more in depth when I talk about the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative, but essentially a way of life or a state of existence where you're able to thrive and live life to the fullest, be happy, healthy, prosper, and you're doing it in a manner that's in balance with your surroundings, your environment, and the people around you as well. It's essentially what the Sustainable Communities aspect is all about. There's also a bit of autonomy that's mixed in, the right to self-determination. We'll talk about that more in a second. So essentially, within sustainable communities, we're going to be focusing on a few key areas. Food production and water procurement, of course, are very important. Without food or water, we're not really going to exist too long, and it doesn't really matter if you're free or not if you're no longer living. We want to focus on earthen shelters, building simple homes with minimal materials in a manner that you can do it yourself. It's affordable. You don't have to have a 30-year mortgage hanging over your head. We want to focus on alternative energy as well, explore that, build alternative energy systems, and help free people from dependency on all sorts of hierarchical energy systems. Also, cooperation and community building. What it means to have a thriving, prosperous community that trades amongst themselves peacefully for mutual benefit, absent coercion, absent one party gaining at the expense of another party. Pretty basic stuff. Then we get into thriving families, and we believe that a major part of a thriving community is thriving in connected families. And I've been really exploring this a lot because I had a baby girl about 16 months ago, and we have another one on the way, one month from now. Yeah! Woo! Procreation for the win! So essentially, myself, we had the baby at home with a midwife, and we did it as natural as we could. There was a little use of non-natural stuff. But we want people to be informed about birthing, right? Natural birthing isn't for everyone. Home birthing isn't for everyone. Some people have riskier births. But we think it's important for everyone to be informed of the various risks associated with different types of births and different types of pregnancy as well. We're also encouraging the exploration of peaceful parenting, or nonviolent parenting, which some would say. However, I've heard from people that whenever we say nonviolent parenting, it arouses defensiveness in some people because they think it assumes that if they spank their kids, or swatting, as some people like to call it, to avoid using the term spank or hit, they don't think that it's violent. I happen to believe that it is violent. I define violence as force, the use of force intended to harm or cause pain. But we're exploring that idea because we believe in order to create a peaceful world, we have to have peaceful households, and we have to not have bullying in our home. We have to have an air of mutual respect amongst the parents and the children, and that goes for the spouses as well. There should be mutual respect amongst the spouses. If we want to live in a world free of aggression, then we should have households free of aggression. We're exploring all of those ideas. We're also exploring alternative education. I think one of the things we want to do is essentially if a family doesn't want to have their children in public school, but they feel that they don't have the capability or the resources or the time or energy to provide alternative education, we want to help them to do that. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like at the moment, but we want to do studies and explore and reach out to people and find out if they do want alternative education but they're not able to provide it, why is that? Because I don't think anybody that doesn't want to have their children in what people call an indoctrination center should have to have them in there. And I think we have the ability, the resources, the knowledge, the creativity to accomplish that for anybody that wants to pull their kids out. Also, family entrepreneurship. There's a lot of freedom in working for yourself, or at least not working for someone else. And the idea of a family business that you can pass on to your children, or even children that are starting businesses on their own in their youth. For example, our good friend Tracy Ward out of Kansas City, her two daughters, which are like 13 and 11, they've already ran a couple of businesses. One of them, they make little bracelets and hair pieces. They sell them online, and they also have them in stores in Kansas City. So I think it creates a wonderful ethic of self-ownership, self-responsibility, and just essentially living for yourself, working for yourself. You don't have to work for someone else. It's something that we're exploring as well. Finally, we're exploring the healthy individuals. We think the key component of any fully functioning and thriving society and family is healthy individuals. And you know, there's often a disconnect in the libertarian world between freedom from government, right? We want to be free from government, but there's all sorts of different institutions or ways of life that harm your freedom. So we're encouraging people to live in a manner more in line with their bodies and within nature, and to avoid putting toxins in their bodies when they can, and to avoid putting unnatural substances or inorganic food. And we think not only can we be free from oppressive government, but we also ought to thrive to be free from chronic disease and chronic ailments whenever we can. We subscribe to the idea that the body is a wonderful machine that when in the proper environment and given the proper vitamins, minerals, nutrients, that it can heal itself rather magnificently. And many people think that it's a miracle, but really it's just the body doing what it was designed to do, or what it evolved to do, whatever view you want to take on that front. So we're going over nutrition and diet. We're going over preventative care. We don't happen to be big fans of allopathic medicine or Western medicine. There is a place for it, of course, in emergencies. For example, we don't think if it's a normal, natural birth that it even needs to take place in a hospital, which is a place where emergency procedures take place. Whenever something bad happens, it's natural. It's what humans do. They've been doing it since we've been around. It's what we're programmed to do. So we would like to see people engage in natural remedies to deal with ailments whenever possible. And again, there's all sorts of different aspects, and it's all entirely subjective, and maybe different parts of what we're going to be exploring today isn't for everyone, but I think it's important for us to at least strive towards this way and be more in line with our nature and the nature of the world and the universe as well. One of the things that we're going to do is help families that can't afford alternative medicine, because vitamins are really expensive, and if you really want to be on a strong vitamin regimen, it costs you a lot of money. Of course, being in the hospital all the time or dealing with cancer, Joel Salatin has this thing. He says, if you think organic food's expensive, have you priced cancer lately? So sure, maybe it'll be a little more expensive in the short term, but ultimately you're going to live a happier, healthier lifestyle, and you'll avoid future expenses staying out of the hospital. So we want to help people that maybe can't afford it or don't have access to natural health care solutions, whether it's vitamins and nutrition, or going to visit a naturopath or a holistic doctor or a chiropractor, for example. We want to help them to do that by putting together money and providing resources. And one of the board members actually is, his name's Dr. Matthew Buckley. He's a naturopath, and he's agreed to take on some families to help them. One of the things that he does is he helps families get off of pharmaceutical medications, whether they're SSRIs or heart medication or high blood pressure medication. A lot of times if you simply change your diet and the way that you live, you'll find that there's no need to be dependent on that type of stuff, which is not only expensive, but there's all sorts of unintended consequences that come along with interfering with the natural system. One more quick note on that. I like to compare what many people do in the allopathic medicine world with government intervention into the market, right? So the government intervenes in the market unnaturally and creates economic imbalances, sends false signals to entrepreneurs. This creates booms and bust cycles, and the economy gets sick as a result of it. Well, often that same thing happens when people use pharmaceuticals as a means of solving one particular problem. They find that now there's a need to take another pharmaceutical for this problem. Now the system is out of balance and out of whack, and it leads to even more problems. But we find with just like the market, if you just, take a step back and let the market do its natural thing, then you'll have a lot more balance. So many of those different, that same analogy of intervention will be explored through all of this, because people can intervene based on central planning or based on what someone with an MD next to their name believes. But really, whenever you just live a life that's in line with our nature, and if you explore what our nature is all about, I believe that we'll find that we're living more happy, healthy, and thriving lifestyles. So that's essentially an overview of what those 3 areas are all about. Can somebody grab me some water? I don't know if there's any around, or cup, or...
Here,
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, if you were more sustainable.
Well, as we'll explore, I don't think you can be truly sustainable without the help of the community. So. Aha. All right, so in exploring these 3 different areas, some of the things that we're going to do, as you see here on the front, we're going to host health education meetings in underserved communities. We're going to study the Central Texas area, and we're going to ask questions like, do you know that infants should not be consuming fluoride in their formula? Or did you know that high fructose corn syrup has these negative effects? Or did you know that this is a natural remedy to a headache, or so on and so forth? And those communities that are lacking knowledge, we're going to go put on health education meetings in those areas, and we're hoping to do at least 8 in the Central Texas area. Also at those meetings and through these studies, we're going to find new or expecting mothers who cannot afford fluoride water filters, and we're going to help them to get fluoride water filters, because even the Center for Disease Control admits that you ought not to give fluoridated water to infants in their formula. So we're going to help as many families as we can to do that. We've started a goal of 100 families, and we're going to have some discounted water filtration systems that we're going to purchase. And once we find those 100, if we have 250 more families that need help in this realm, we're just going to start raising money, and it could be as little as $50 could help a child to avoid that toxic waste that is fluorosilicic acid or sodium fluoride. I think that's going to be really beneficial. And on the flip side, I believe it'll put pressure on the local city government, cause them to lose face, to maybe they'll finally act and remove the fluoride like we've been trying to get them to do for the past 3 years. We're going to launch and sustain a community garden in our front yard. We live on a 2.4 acre farmstead I'll talk a little bit more about here in a sec. And we're going to invite the local community in the area to participate in the community garden. We're also going to invite the Liberty community that's already helping out a lot on our farm to have a little plot there on the community garden. There's actually not a community garden in the zip code that we live in. Central Texas has a very high per capita rate of community gardens, and there's a lot of institutions that are already furthering this, but there's not one in the area that we're going to have, so we'll be the first community garden in that area. And of course, for those people that are trying to create a free society as well, this creates a wonderful opportunity to just talk about freedom and life in general, and it creates a wonderful opportunity to build community. We'll talk more about that. We're also going to develop an aquaponic system. We're going to be able to build 3 different aquaponic systems from scratch on our own, very inexpensively, and we're going to compare and study the efficacy of the different systems. Aquaponics is essentially a small micro ecosystem. You grow food by having a fish tank, and the waste from the fish goes in, is pumped into the vegetable tanks, and the water provides nutrients for the plants, and the plants actually filter out the waste that then gets cycled back into the fish. So it's almost a completely sustainable system, except for the evaporation that takes place. So we're going to build some of those systems. We're going to build a greenhouse on our property. We're going to study them. We're going to produce educational media and have forums out there and really explore that. I think it's a wonderful way. And then not only do you get the vegetables that are completely organic and grown all by yourself, but you also get fish for protein, tilapia and all that good stuff. We're also going to purchase an inexpensive diesel truck, and we're going to build a biodiesel processing system and begin to use a sustainable resource that's good for the environment and good for the pocketbook. They say it only costs about 90 cents per gallon whenever you set up the biodiesel. And essentially what biodiesel is using other wastes, like the oil that they throw out from fryers and restaurants, and you mix that up a little bit and you throw it in your truck or your generator, and it's not as expensive as gas, and you're not giving your resources and value to the oil cartel. And it's much more sustainable. We also want to assist families in providing alternative education to their children, as I referenced before. We're going to do studies of the community. We're going to ask the question, if you want to provide alternative education to your kids, but you're not doing it, why is that? What can we do to help? We're partnering with this guy, Justin Armand, him and his wife, Justin and Jessica. They live with the principles outlined in this pamphlet here, especially within the family. They just started a group, parentsforliberty.org, and we're going to partner with them through this nonprofit. And one of the things that they're already working on is developing a Craigslist type of application where families that homeschool already, and maybe they're willing to take on another couple kids on these days of the week, they post that, and then someone that says, I got to get my kid out of this public school, they're forcing the kids to wear RFIDs, I work every day, I'm in debt, I can't pull them out of school. They post that they have a need for someone that might be able to help with their kids, and if there's a matchup, then it will just happen naturally and organically. It's something that he's actively working on right now. And then we're going to be producing educational media through a project called sovereignliving.tv. There's already a website there with a bunch of great articles, essays, videos, original stuff, reposted stuff. And essentially the idea came up with me and my lovely fiancée, Catherine Bleish. It was supposed to be like Martha Stewart Living, but it has Catherine there, and she's there and looking nice in a dress and stuff. But instead of, messing with doilies and doing crafts, she's shooting the AK-47 at the gun range, or building a raised bed garden, doing canning, all sorts of that stuff, exploring parenting as we raise our daughter and our kiddo on the way. So there's going to be YouTube videos, there's going to be a podcast, and one of the things that we're working on right now that's real exciting with my buddy James Benefico as one of the cameramen, we're actually about to go to Bardo Farms for 2 or 3 days. It's going to be snowing like crazy, I bet. It's going to be tough for this Texas boy right here. What's a snowstorm? What do I expect? Are we going to be stuck here? What better place to be stuck in a snowstorm than at Liberty Farm, right? So we are going to be visiting Bardo Farms, and we're going to tape it, and it's part of what's going to become a reality series that we're going to pitch to mainstream television networks called Sovereign Living, the show, which will essentially explore myself, my family, Catherine, our children, and our farm, and our journey towards self-sufficiency and our journey towards living a voluntary and natural life. And it'll follow what we're doing and the baby that we're about to have. And we really want to use it as an educational tool. So essentially we'll be setting our ambitious goals of providing 50% of our food from our property and living off the grid, providing our own energy, storing a certain amount of water. And we're going to live it out on the farm, we're going to build it, and we're going to travel across the country. We're going to visit with different people, we're going to learn from them, and we're going to tape it all and put it in a nice, fun, edgy little package. And hopefully it'll get plopped up on major television. And I feel pretty confident we can accomplish that. So we'll be able to spread that message to the world through the Sovereign Living Initiative, which you could already go to and check out all sorts of cool stuff. So that's essentially an overview of the Center for Natural Living. I'm really excited about what we're going to do. We're going to be focused in Central Texas, but I really want to partner with a lot of the stuff that y'all are doing up here in New Hampshire, especially with what's going on with Bardo Farms. And the vehicle to do that is going to be the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative, which is what I'm going to be talking about for the remainder of our little chat here. So essentially the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative is a project within the Center for Natural Living that aims to explore and study and build and help and assist existing sustainable and autonomous communities. The idea actually came about in my exploration of Agenda 21, which is a United Nations program written out in 1992 at the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, authored by a gentleman by the name of Maurice Strong, a billionaire oil mogul. Essentially, it's a plan to further a lot of the same goals that we're talking about here, about sustainability, but it wants to use centralization, hierarchy, coercion, non-market forces in order to accomplish those goals. It wants to have central control from an international level, and it wants to push down edicts that aren't representative, not that they're representative now with the current system, but it would be even further from a representative consensual-based government. Not that we have that now. But just got to throw that out there. So essentially, Agenda 21, they go from a global to local perspective. They circumvent the federal and state governments. They go straight to the local communities, and they work with shareholders, private governments, as well as the cities in order to further their vision of sustainable development, which is essentially central planning and giving favors to the local businesses and driving people off of their property. Part of Agenda 21 is to eventually close off 50% of the United States geographic area to human access. It's called the Wildlands Project. And I was actually bashed in the Southern Poverty Law Center's intelligence report for espousing Agenda 21 conspiracy theories, but everything that I just articulated is actually written down in their own programs and UN websites. So it's definitely not a conspiracy theory. There's an organization that is carrying out Agenda 21 called the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, or ICLEI, I-C-L-E-I. And it's ICLEI that inspired the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative, because essentially what ICLEI does is it circumvents federal and national governments, goes straight to local communities and encourages them and assists them in implementing the United Nations version of sustainable development, which is again pushing for environmental control, the United Nations defines sustainability as giving future generations the same access to the resources that we have today. That's not the way that I define it. And that's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but future generations could develop new technology where they don't need to use the same resources. There could be natural resources that are depleted by human consumption today. I don't think there's a need to speculate about future generations. If we focus on the now and if we live in a way that's harmonious with our natural environment, then the future generations are going to be okay anyway. Unless some Malthusian catastrophe happens. See all those asteroids coming around, the meteors. So ICLEI, again, is furthering that concept of sustainable development, using government control and central planning to create their desired end. We want to essentially do that same thing. We want to work with local communities, not local governments, and we want to ignore them at all costs. I don't even think we want to partner with them. I mean, we'll have a conversation, but I don't foresee any partnering initiatives or us taking public money. There's Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative. But instead, we want to work directly with the people, directly with families and communities to further our goals. And we want to do it all across the country, starting and eventually all across the world. And that's what the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative is all about. We add the value of autonomy, which we'll explore here in a second, to the equation. Agenda 21 and what the current status quo is in environmentalism wants to do the opposite of autonomy, wants to take away local families and individuals and communities' right to self-determination. So, I define sustainability, as I said before, as the state of existence that allows individuals, families, and communities to thrive while remaining in harmonious relationships with their environments. It's worded a little differently there, but it's essentially the same idea. And there's different areas that we're focusing on, as I mentioned before: food and water, shelter, energy, which I believe are the four most core basic human needs. And I think that I personally believe that I'm not going to be satisfied until we have freedom and liberty for everyone in the entire world. I may not find that in my lifetime, but that's the goal. And the reason being, to refer back to one of my mentors, he had this little phrase, he would use it in his little signatures, and it said, "Peace plus freedom equals liberty." And I think the meaning behind that he was going for is, sure, you can be free, and you can be free to do your own thing, and you and your own people, and you're free from external coercion. But can you be at a state of peace when everyone else isn't? And when there's still people in chains, and in slavery, and in serfdom? So on that note, it pains me to go about worrying about my freedom and my family's freedom when there's people that are living on the streets that are starving, when there's children that are starving, when there's parents that can't even feed their own children. That's a problem. And with the resources that we have and the technology we have and the creativity we have, there's no reason why that should be a reality. And I think if we put our heads together and if we're ambitious enough, we can help to solve those problems. So I think that those 4 core things, you can't even begin to explore the philosophy of liberty or talk, contemplate what Thoreau meant by this quote or that quote when your stomach is empty. The only thing you're thinking about is eating. I've never been in a starving situation before, but I can't imagine, well, if I don't eat for a few or 6, I miss a meal, I already start getting a little discombobulated. I can't imagine what it would be like to not eat for 2 or 3 days. But you're certainly not going to be in a state to reach a state of enlightenment or to explore the libertarian philosophy. So I think it's important for us not to neglect the idea of helping others to even be in a situation to explore the creation of a free society. And that's why we want to focus on those 4 areas: food and water, shelter, and energy. And so essentially what we're doing through the nonprofit, through the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative, there's some micro stuff we're doing, and there's some big picture stuff we're doing. And on the micro level, we're exploring all of these areas on our own farm. We call it the Blush Family Farm. John Bush, Catherine Blush, put them together. We're not married yet, so we call it Blush Family Farm. Maybe it'll change to Bush Family Farm when we get married. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's chauvinist to expect her to take my name. I think about that though. Yeah. Mitochondria passes on through the woman and the sacred feminine and everything. Why has it got to be the guy that has it? Oh, she doesn't hear this because I want to. We're not live streaming, are we? Damn. So we're exploring those 4 areas on the Blush Family Farm, which is a 2.4 acre plot just outside of the Austin city limits. And we have a bunch of friends that come over. We have Sunday farm days. And some of the things that we've done, we started a kitchen garden, which started a while ago. And we've built probably about 7 or 8 large raised bed gardens using cinder blocks, which was really, really easy. The first of which we buried in the ground. It's a little bit lower. It helps with the temperature and it helps to retain water. But the other ones are just stacked up cinder blocks, like 4 feet wide, 10 feet long. Really easy way to make a bed. And it's been a lot of work, and we got wiped out because of a drought. We had like 70+ days of heat in Texas. Not to deter you from moving there if you're interested in checking us out.
Is it not normal for Texas?
It's not normal for Texas, no. It was very abnormal, but it is normal to be extremely hot in the summer and to not want to go outside, just like you might not want to go outside in the middle of a blizzard in New Hampshire. So we're working on this kitchen garden. We get a lot of, we had a big onion crop. We grew a ton of onions, and we managed to have onions throughout the year just from what we do in our little backyard garden. Tomatoes are doing really well, peppers, all sorts of stuff. We're not really pulling in a lot of food to make a significant change in our diet at this point, but it's really allowing us to learn and to prepare to do that, which we are beginning to do now. But I think one of the most important things is it inspires people when they come over to hang out, have a beer, work on a project. Hey, come check out the garden, and they see all this great stuff. We send them home with eggs. We have chickens also, I'm going to talk about that. But it's really inspiring for them to see it actually in practice, because a lot of people talk about the need to be prepared and the need to grow food, but it's very difficult when you actually do it. Some people think, they hear a commercial on Alex Jones of, get your survival seed bank, create a 1 acre crisis garden. And they think that they can just have the seed bank there in the closet, and when the poo hits the fan, they'll be able to pull that seed bank out and fill their family's bellies. But it's not that easy, and like I said, it took us several growing seasons before we actually started producing some fruits, so we could see the fruits of our labor. It's very difficult, so I strongly recommend starting now. We'll talk more about recommendations and tips and stuff. Some other stuff that we're doing, we have chickens. Yeah. Chickens are a wonderful resource. I think raising chickens is far easier than growing vegetables, so much easier. We now have multiple generations of chickens that are on our farm that we hatched on our own in an incubator, also having them hatch naturally, which is desirable, especially if it's the Center for Natural Living. They're not 100% organic because the feed that we supplement their food with, they free range, they mostly eat insects. We also have a little maggot bucket where we put meat, it has holes in the bottom, the maggots fall out. Doesn't always work, but it does work to dispose of rancid meat. We try to get rid of as little waste as we possibly can. We're trying to go zero waste eventually. But the chickens are very easy to raise. Oh yeah, I was talking about the feed. We tried to go organic feed. It's like $50 a bag. It ended up being so expensive that we had to balance our little. But it's just a tiny bit. It's a supplement, and we feed them from down the road from the local shop. Chickens are great. They provide eggs. We bring in about 35 eggs a day on a good day, and we have plenty for our family to eat. Great breakfast, totally healthy, very inexpensive. And then with our surplus, we take those eggs and we barter them. And we're bringing back $0.10 a dozen. So you can buy eggs from us, you can trade eggs for 4 Federal Reserve notes, which is a little higher than when we trade them for $0.10 a dozen, which is like $2.50. I don't know what silver's at. Maybe it's a little lower. I think silver's kind of low. So we're bringing back $0.10 a dozen, which helps people to realize that, wow, our money has lost value, and wow, this is cool that I'm using sound money and actual interaction. We also barter with them as well. So they act as a commodity. It's a double bonus. So everybody should, if you have the capability, get some chickens. And even if you don't have the capability, you can have a share of the chickens down the farm, on the farm down the road, or maybe bar those into something like that. We're doing a hugelkultur garden. This is something we're doing right now to take it to a next level and help get closer to our goal of 50% sustainability as far as the food that we eat on our property. We're starting a large garden of hugelkultur mounds. Essentially what hugelkultur is it's a raised bed mound that has wood at the bottom of the bed. And you stack the wood, preferably rotting wood like from a creek bed or something. You stack the wood, then you put soil and compost and all sorts of good stuff. We love horse manure as a means of fertilizing. And you stack it up, you plant on top of that, and the idea is that the nutrients from the decomposing tree will always slowly be leaking into your bed. And also in Texas with drought conditions, you have to water it far less because the wood retains moisture when it actually rains. So hugelkultur mounds are a great way to do it. And right now we're working on, we have most of them plotted out and we built one of them, but we're building 17 hugelkultur mounds that are 10.5 feet wide by 4 feet. So it's going to be a whole lot of square footage for growing space. But still, that's not going to be able to provide 50% for our family. It's going to take a whole lot more than that. That's why it's really difficult. Even half your diet, imagine in a crisis situation, you still can only do half your diet. You're going to have to rely on your community and external factors as well. But it's taken us a whole lot of work to get to 50%. It's our goal for this year. It's also been the goal for the past 2 years. But we got this trusty nonprofit to help us along the way. And we've been building a lot more community too, and people are coming over to help volunteer. So that's one of the things that we have in the works that we're exploring and we're teaching people to do on the micro level through the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative. We've also started our first gray water system, which was simply something that we came up with. I was inspired by my dad. He has a small system in his backyard with 2 55-gallon plastic barrels. So we set up 5 55-gallon plastic barrels, and one of them is a little bit higher than the other, just like this. There's 5 of them for a total of 275 gallons. And we simply drilled a hole and put a little PVC pipe here, 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 and here. And we built our own rain gutter on the side of our barn. The water drips in here, fills up, pours in, yada yada yada. You get the idea. So it's pretty simple. I think these cost like 30 or 40 bucks. Catherine bought them with the last of her settlement money when she sued the city of Maplewood, Missouri for falsely arresting her. So I'd like to thank Maplewood, Missouri for helping us to be more sustainable. Although for her, a night in jail probably wasn't worth the amount that she ended up getting paid out, because it really took a pretty nasty hit on her. If you spent a night in jail, it's not very fun. But nonetheless, we've managed to buy these, and we just scrapped it together. Pete Ayer was down on our farm that weekend, and Clyde Voluntarius. Those guys are workhorses, and they really helped us out. So we have 275 gallons, and that's just the beginning. We want to recreate this on the other side of the fence here, and maybe do 2 more. So 275 times 4, what would that be? 1,000, 1,100, something like that. 1,100 gallons. That's a lot of water. We also want to purchase a water tower and have a water tower on the property. And when these fill up, we'll pump it from here up into the water tower. So it's absolutely important. It'll help us to continue to water our chickens and water our garden and feed the chickens and all that good stuff. Of course, if we're going to drink the water, it's just sitting outside stagnant, so we'll have to run it through a water filtration system, which should be a part of anybody's home. So that's what we got going now, essentially. We also do canning and all that good stuff. A quick tip, we have great water storage in addition to that, because not everybody has room to do that in the backyard, or maybe time, although I think you should make time if you have the capability to do so. But another thing you could do is, if you have even bottles like this, or if you get tea, or I hope you're not drinking 3 liters of soda, you could take the empty ones and fill them with water from your tap. Also get the filter. I'd recommend filtering them post. And then we have like 2 closets just stacked full. We're running out of storage space, it's kind of getting in the way. But they're just stacked full of different larger water bottles. And even in a non-crisis situation, our water company has had pipe problems. So, you know, we brushed our teeth in it, used it to boil some food, used it to do a little impromptu bath. So, you know, water's a valuable commodity, and you never really understand until you don't have it. So have it. There's no reason why you shouldn't have water, right? Just do it. Nike. So another thing that we haven't done yet is we want to explore alternative energy on the property. One of the first things we'll probably do is a small solar system. We want to power the aquaponic system with solar, but those are some other things that we're exploring. We'll be building aquaponic systems, as I mentioned before, and also a biodiesel processing system and a biodiesel truck. So we'll be doing all this stuff on our property. We'll be filming it all. We'll be inviting people to take part in it. And the idea is to educate and empower people and just say, like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I grew up in suburbia, not really good with tools, but for the past 2 years I've been trying to do this farmstead thing and become self-sufficient, so I've been forced to learn. So we want to show people that. We're just normal people, maybe below average on the carpentry scale, but we're doing it still. And we make mistakes and we screw up, and like, we built that from our own accord. There were no plans. We want to demonstrate that, and we want to inspire micro level, and we're filming it and we're sharing it with people. That's also what we're doing with the SovereignLiving.tv initiative. So next we want to take that idea, that concept, these values, and we want to export it to the community. So we're doing that in a number of ways already on the property by having people over. Man, it's very rewarding. We also do chicken slaughters, and I'm just slowly starting to get the hang of it. James filmed the last one, and it wasn't as good as the one before that. It's very rewarding not only to eat your own food. I stopped buying chicken from the store. We have 50 chickens in the backyard, and every time I'd go grab the chicken in the grocery store, I was like, what am I doing? Chickens. Don't be lazy. Go slaughter one. Come on. So I stopped buying chicken. Now I'm only eating chickens from our property. But it's very rewarding to have someone over. We've had multiple people that never slaughtered a chicken before. They do it for the very first time. It's so empowering. Many people are really nervous before they do so. But once they do it, I'm telling you, they got squeamish too, and then they went ahead and did it. Even Catherine did. And she's a vegetarian, but it was very empowering to teach people that and to make them feel empowered and self-sufficient. You squeamish ones, are you vegetarian?
Not 100%, but I
What
will.
about you?
Free range chicken or meat, maybe I'll eat. And
You
fish.
have to slow those for that.
I know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot worse when you see what they're doing at the factory farms if you just get it from the grocery store. And we showed the video. I didn't have my sharp knife on me, and the knife I used was a little bit dull. And we cut the neck of the chicken off, and it actually took a tiny bit more time. It wasn't anything crazy, but it took a second more. But obviously, compared to the chicken living in a small box its whole life. But somebody was a little squeamish, and we were reviewing the video, and they're like, "Oh man, this seems a little barbaric." But in reality, I mean, that's what it takes to eat your own food, and it's not always sexy, and it's a little bit warm, and pulling the guts out definitely seems a little bit extreme. But when compared to what those chickens are going through in a cage, never leaving, being pumped full of antibiotics and hormones. It's definitely rewarding. I think it's a better path towards getting our food. So what we're doing is we're teaching people, we're inviting the community to our farm, we're teaching them there. We also want to export this. So in addition to building a community garden in our front yard and inviting everybody in the neighborhood as well as the libertarian community in Central Texas, we also want to go help people build raised bed gardens in their own front yards. And we're going to partner, they don't know it yet, but we're going to partner with this group called the Food is Free Project. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff in Central Texas. They go out and build wicking beds in people's front yards. A wicking bed is a bed that has a small water reservoir at the bottom, and you just pour the water in. You only have to water it like every 2 to 4 weeks. So they do this project where they go and they build a raised bed garden in your front yard. I encourage you to help, And the only catch is we'll build it in your front yard for you, but you have to let other people who have one, and you have to let the community share the food. So what we want to do is help these guys, and it's great because I've had 10 years of experience doing community organizing and liberty activism and truth activism and all that good stuff. And usually we organize people to go knock on doors and ask to vote for Jerk Off Candidate A or Jerk Off Candidate B. Pardon my French for the YouTube video, for you in the audience. But this is going to be a lot more rewarding because we'll be able to organize people to go door to door with flyers like this, or flyers about growing your own food, or we'll get all of our grassroots volunteers who marched in troves for Ron Paul, and we'll go help low-income families to feed themselves. I think it's a lot more beneficial and valuable if our goal is to create a free society, to demonstrate and empower people to be self-sufficient and to help them do so and to build community. So we're going to take that idea, our organizing, Catherine and I's experience, and the other people that are involved in the organization, and we're going to take it to the streets. We're going to organize the community. As I said before, we're going to do these natural health education forums. We're also going to do educational forums on growing food and doing chickens and all that good stuff as well. We're going to set up a seed bank. There's a lot of seeds on all the different vegetables. We're going to save them all, and there's a project that we're already doing called the Agora Seed Trade. It's on Facebook, and essentially it's just a bunch of people. It's an advice forum. If somebody's like, hey, I want to do tomatoes this year, what are some great tomatoes for this region, somebody will mail them tomatoes. And most of our first vegetables that we grew that now have multiple generations, a lot of them started off as heirloom seeds. I don't know how many generations it takes, but we're getting close to having our own heirloom seeds because we've kept them on our property and we've reproduced them. So that'll happen. People that want to get started, we'll hook them up with little instructions and those seeds. So that's really exciting. And a big thing we want to do is support existing sustainable and or autonomous communities. And we'll get to that autonomy thing, which is a little more complicated than the sustainability side. We want to support Bardo farms. We want to support other farms in New Hampshire, all across the world. If anybody's working to live this lifestyle, we want to do what we can with this nonprofit, whether it's through money, through exposure, through videos, or whatnot. In our budget, my plan is to have raised $1 million in the next 4 years. So if we're able to do that, according to plan, I often find sometimes when you just write it down and you're feeling good about yourself, you can actually fulfill the plan. So we want to go in and maybe we could sponsor the building of another cabin on Bardo Farms or something like that. We want to just help empower people that are already doing it and that are further along than us, or people that want to start. And finally, another thing that we want to do with these earthen homes, back to the homeless folk, there's a big homeless problem in Austin. Every once in a while they do these like police roundups, or that nasty president of ours, not my president, I didn't subscribe to any of that, didn't consent to any of that. That man named President Barack Obama, Barry Sortoro, he came to Austin recently, and before he came for some speech or whatever, they swept all downtown. They went and rounded up the homeless folk and threw them in jail. They even have a downtown Austin community court that caters to homeless people. They just put them in a cycle. They don't have any money, so they just put them in jail a couple nights. It's probably to maintain the system and keep a need to have the staff there in the jail, but it's disgusting and it's despicable. And I don't see why there isn't any reason why we can't raise enough money to buy 10 acres and to work with these homeless folk and to build earthen homes so they can have their own micro-community. I mean, why not? It seems like it makes a lot more sense than sending them to the homeless shelter that's downtown where they just stay there and it's crowded. The police are right next door to rough them up and bust them. And it's an epidemic that happens in every major city, even small towns. And there's no reason why we can't put the money together and the willpower and the elbow grease and just start building homes for these people. Why the hell not? So, moving on to the exciting part, an autonomous community. I will make the argument that you can't have true sustainability without autonomy, and you can't have true autonomy without sustainability. And so the definition of autonomy, according to dictionary.com, there's 3 definitions: independence or freedom as of the will or one's actions, the autonomy of the individual, or the state or condition of having independence or freedom or being autonomous, self-government or the right of self-government. A self-governing community is the third one. So I believe that in addition to striving to be sustainable in our lives, our family lives, and our communities, we ought to strive for autonomy. Because I believe if individuals and communities can be autonomous, then we can live in a way where we can all fulfill our common goals. And for those who may not subscribe to a system of free trade and capital investment, or for those who prefer an economy based on labor hours, or for those who oppose the idea of electing people to make decisions for us, or those who oppose a Republican form of government, those who prefer a Republican form of government. That's okay, as long as you don't want to inflict that type of system upon me. And I believe now, in this day and age, we're living in very wonderful times where this could be a reality. And it's my opinion that the nation state is on the decline. It's on the way out. And you can simply see a trend of more and more and more nation states that are popping up. There's, the Soviet Union broke up and split off into a dozen or so states. I believe that is a trend that's going to continue. And I'm very inspired by the stuff that's taking place here with the Free State Project, the Seasteading Institute that's going on, the Blue Seed, where they're building these cities on cruise liners on the coast of California. I think this is a trend that's going to further develop because we're pushing those ideas out there. There's even a conference in Austin called Voice and Exit. It's going to be a TED Talk style thing that's going to be going on, and there's going to be all sorts of people. Myself and Catherine are speaking. Michael Strong, who's doing the Free City Project in Honduras. It's going to be great, and they talk about the idea that there's two ways to go about changing society, through coercion or through persuasion. Coercion, of course, is violence or the threat of violence, forcing someone to your viewpoint. Persuasion is using your voice to encourage them to participate or to subscribe to your point of view. And they say, if persuasion doesn't work, obviously coercion is immoral. If persuasion doesn't work, then we ought to have a right to exit from that particular system. And they're exploring these ideas, and these ideas, I keep seeing them all the time in different movements and different cultures. The idea that we ought to be able to opt out, essentially, and do our own thing and be left alone. And they point out in Voice and Exit that maybe some of these experiments will fail. Maybe somebody will think that we can have shared ownership of this or that or the other, or maybe the individualists, their community won't be able to find group cohesion or whatever, and it fails. That's okay. We ought to have the right to experiment with these different types of systems. Because I can tell you what, I certainly don't appreciate being forced to pay for foreign wars of aggression or fund my own oppression. And I don't like it, I'm done with it, and there's so many people that are done with it. And I think the most important thing we could do is geographically concentrate individuals who share same beliefs and views and who are ready and willing to create that reality. And let's go ahead and start doing it. And the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative wants to be a vehicle for that. And as I said before, the sustainability side is going to be easier than the autonomy side because, as Ernie Hancock said, there's two types of people in this world: those who want to be left alone and those who just won't leave you alone. And for us to even be exploring these ideas of living autonomous or having the right to practice self-determination, sometimes people get shot over ideas like this, and people get killed or put in jail when they actually try to practice this, as Darian was talking about before with Henry David Thoreau, as he pronounced it. I think autonomous communities are the way to go because it can create an environment where we can realize equal liberty that Herbert Spencer, the classical liberal, talked about. The idea that my rights go so far as your rights, and I can be free to do as I please as long as I respect your right to do the same. That can operate on a community level, and different people can have their different views and their different ways of life respected. And I would venture to guess that eventually there wouldn't be warring communities. We would find that maybe the communists or the anarcho-syndicalists are really good at producing this widget, and the anarcho-capitalists are doing this, and we could trade and have mutual respect amongst one another. I would hope. There's a lot of anarcho-syndicalists that are like, you can't even use the term anarchist because you're a capitalist. I think we should all just say, look, man, if you want to create your world, I want to create my world. As long as you don't want to force your world on my world, let's form a mutual respect, a confederation even, and let's work together. It's a beautiful thing. So there's been a variety of different sustainable and autonomous communities throughout history, and they've been propagated by different movements: individualist anarchists, anarcho-syndicalists, anarcho-Christians, like the Christian Identity Movement. There's a great book called Men Against the State, The Expositors of Individualist Anarchism in America. It explores Josiah Warren and his township New Harmony, which Darian referred to earlier. There was a lot of experimentation in the 19th century after the signing of the Constitution. A lot of people were like, this whole central government thing, I don't know if it's really working out for me. Whiskey Rebellion, the Alien and Sedition Acts, that whole Trail of Tears thing, this genocide of the Indians. I don't know if I want to take part in the system. We're going to do our own thing. Different people tried that. Robert Owen tried that. He was the predecessor to Josiah Warren. They had a town, New Harmony. It failed in large part to stuff associated with the free rider program. People couldn't take ownership in the community, and not a lot of stuff got done. Josiah Warren tried it again with his community, New Harmony, and it ended up surviving up until it was incorporated and changed the name. It's now Brentwood, New York, if anybody wants to go by and visit there. During the Ukraine Revolution, 1918, there was a free territory called Makhnovia, and it managed to exist for a short period of time in relative anarchy. There was the Spanish anarchists, which many people are familiar with, anarcho-syndicalists and different types of anarchists in Spanish. They actually had some pretty solid communities built in Catalonia, which is exciting. There was the Branch Davidians in Waco, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a sec. There's contemporary autonomous communities right now, and there's communities that are on the verge of being autonomous or exploring the idea of autonomy. Or whether or not the government likes it or not, they're asserting their autonomy, and it's happening right now. And it may not be pretty, and there might be friction, but it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen, and there's not anything the man's going to be able to do about it. Right now you have the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico. They declared autonomy after NAFTA was signed, and they found indigenous farms being shut down because they couldn't compete with the subsidized goods being shipped in from America. So they said, you know what? Enough. We're not going to deal with this. We're rising up. And they had like a one-day violent revolution. They took over a town, and then they said, we just did that to get your attention. We don't want to use violent resolution as our tactics. They tried to lobby the federal government to back off, to pull NAFTA out. It didn't happen. So they said, you know what? Whatever. We're going to self-govern. And they created their own autonomous self-governing network. And there's been attacks and skirmishes, but still to this day, that was back in the mid-90s. They're still active. They're still living their own lifestyle, and it's very inspirational to see this taking place in the modern world, just right down the road in Mexico. I think it's something that could be recreated and ought to be recreated. There were some stories recently about the Citadel, which is going to be a patriot community in Idaho, an intentional community. They're going to have massive walls. It's all about, you know, this great American patriot, American exceptionalism ethic, which I don't necessarily subscribe to, but hey man, if you guys want to do your own thing, you guys want to get your rifles and hole up and prepare for the collapse, by all means. Maybe we'll come visit and hang out. Glenn Beck's starting a community in Texas. I don't know what that's going to be all about. Maybe he's copying our Lone Star Libertopia, but I'm excited that he's doing it and that people are exploring these ideas. And this guy's got a lot of money, so maybe it'll be successful. As I referred to, Michael Strong's doing the Free Cities in Honduras. You have seasteading. You have the Free State Project, which is on the path to autonomy actively, not only through the creation of alternative institutions and opting out, but actively through the state legislature, which often makes me eat my own words because I'm very anti-political, but it seems like something's working up here. And then, of course, down in Central Texas, we're exploring Lone Star Libertopia. We're encouraging people, maybe they don't want to come to New Hampshire, maybe it's too far from their family, maybe it's too cold for them. We're doing similar projects down in Central Texas, encouraging people to move down just the Central Texas area. People are going to be influencing the state legislature and trying to do stuff with the state of Texas, which could actually potentially work as an independent state. I wouldn't want to be a part of it because maybe Rick Perry would be the president or some other bozo. But we want to create our own sustainable and autonomous environment in Central Texas. So it's taking place all over the world, and it's a beautiful thing. It's been taking place for quite some time. I only think it's going to happen more. And we want to help it through the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative. Now, anytime I talk about this idea, and even when we were talking about Lone Star Libertopia, people often confused it as us wanting to form an intentional community like David Koresh and just go isolate ourselves from society. And of course, David Koresh and his community, they were murdered by the ATF. Janet Reno, it was violent, it was nasty, they killed dozens of children. And these people were simply trying to opt out and do their own thing. They didn't interfere with any. David Koresh even had an auto shop down the road in the community and was a normal member of the community, but of course the ATF couldn't have anybody opting out and doing their own thing. So people are often worried, isn't that going to happen to us? Because I do believe we should peacefully coexist within existing society. If people want to still live here or there and take part in our community, you can still do that. It doesn't have to be necessarily geographic boundary for the community that we're exploring. That also means that what we're doing in Central Texas can be part of the community that y'all are building here in New Hampshire, right? Just like the Nation of Islam, African Americans wanted all across the country just to say, opt out, we're not going to participate in your system. Of course, they got crushed by the FBI because I've found that the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Bureau of Investigation, They do not like individuals who want to opt out and try to do their own thing, whether it's Christian Identity, whether it's Branch Davidians, whether it's Black Panther Party, whether it's Nation of Islam, or whether it's the Free State Project, or the crew down in Central Texas. They don't like it. So how can we overcome that? Because it seems to be the biggest objection. Because, yeah, let's face it, we're living in an environment where if you want to live your life according to your own values and not participate in something you have a moral problem with, you could be killed. So in order to overcome that, one of the things that we're doing is engaging in hardcore philanthropy and not isolating ourselves and purposefully getting out there and doing everything we can to demonstrate that we're peaceful people like everyone else. We simply want to create a better world for ourselves and for future generations. And that's one of the reasons why we're going out and we're doing health education classes, and we're helping people build community gardens, and we're doing seed banks, and we're helping mothers with the fluoride filters. We want to create an environment where if the state comes and cracks down on us for our desire to be free, then those that are watching, they'll say, well, wait a second, why did they just lock that guy up? He was just at the food bank that been feeding my cousin for the past 6 months since he lost his job. They'll begin to lose faith in a system that is capable of such nasty things, because we simply want to be left free. And then most importantly, when we engage in this philanthropy, when we build community, not only will we have sort of an insurance against state aggression, we hope, but more importantly, we'll be building a better society, a more sustainable society, a healthier society, a happier society, and a more thriving society. So we're doing those things and more with the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative and the Center for Natural Living. And I'm very interested in having you guys help out and take part and seeing what you guys can do over here that overlaps with what we're doing in Central Texas, and take part and learn from what we're doing. And if you aren't exploring these ideas in your life, the idea of living naturally and letting your body fight disease, if maybe you're into spanking and corporal punishment, I think it's very important that we all just consider and take a step back. And I don't have all the answers. Some of this stuff could be completely wrong, but I think it's a good way to live. In my opinion, it's working for myself and my family. So I'd just like all of us to take a sec, look in the mirror, and just ask yourselves, what are you doing to create your ideal society, your environment? Because if we want to create it in the world and create that society, then we have to create it in our own lives. And that's what the Center for Natural Living is all about. Thanks.